Hello class, welcome to chapter 4, the market forces of supply and demand.
Market, a group of buyers or sellers of a particular good or service. Competitive market, many buyers and sellers. First of all, it should be many of them. Each has a negligible impact, which means they will not, or almost zero, their effect, their effects would be zero. A negligible effect on the market price, since there are many of them. Either one cannot influence the whole society. So the market structures are in decreasing order of competitiveness is perfectly competitive market, monopolistically competitive markets, oligopolies, and the monopolies. These four markets are the main materials in microeconomics. And in this course, for this specific chapter, we're only going to learn about the first one, the perfectly competitive markets, not the other three. Okay, only the first one. So markets and computation, you can see the table here. So that's like a summary or general. What's the difference between these four markets? You can read that later because that's not important in this course. What we need to learn is perfectly competitive market. So it's a market with many buyers and sellers. All firms are selling identical products. All products should be the same to each other. You cannot tell the difference between different stores or different producers, different sellers. No barriers to new firms entering the market, which means everyone who feel like I want to do that business, they can enter in. No barriers, alright? So three assumptions, not assumptions, requirements. So in this market, firms are price takers. They are unable to affect the market price. Since there are many of them, either one cannot influence the price. Even though I want to buy a huge amount of them, but compared with the rest of the world, my amount is still a small amount, no matter how huge it is. Demand schedule is a table that shows the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded. First of all, the schedule should be a table. The price of the good and the quantity demanded. Because the price of a good for this good and the quantity demanded, that's a pair of words. You can see these two words together all the time. Alright? And I'm going to tell you later why this is important. So it should be the price of this good and the quantity demanded. The next example is Sophia's demand for muffins. So in this table is the demand schedule, right? This should be a table. It contains price and quantity. Price equal to 0 and 16. Still the same as that PPF graph. You need to have a graph with the price and the quantity and mark all the combination points in your chart. 0, 16, 1, 14, 2, 12, 3, 10, 4, 8, and so on. So after that, you can have these different points. And again, use a line to go through all the points. You will get a graph. That graph is called the demand curve. Demand curve is a graph of the relationship between the price of good and the quantity demanded. Yeah, I marked these two because these two are the pairs of words. You can see for the demand, the relationship between price and quantity will always be negative. The higher price, the lower quantity demanded. Quantity demanded, amount of good that buyers are willing and able to purchase. Law of demand. Other things equal when the price of a good, again, the price of that good change first, and then the quantity demanded change following that. Price change first, and then the quantity demanded. That's the law of demand. And the same, when the price falls, the quantity demanded rise. Negative relationship, right? So no matter you can see it from the chart or from this market demand. Market demand is different from the individual demand. The last slide is the individual demand. It's Sophia's demand, right? So only one person could decide everything. But for the market demand, it should be the sum of all individual demands for good or service. Market demand curve sum the individual demand curves horizontally. I'm going to explain horizontally later. To find the total quantity demanded at any price, we add individual quantities. So how do we get the market demand? Suppose Sophia and Diego are only two buyers in the market for muffins. Right? Sophia's quantity demand and Diego's quantity demand. How to get the market demand? First, we should keep a price fixed, like when the price equals to 0. What the market's demand would be, we should add 16 and 8 together, right? That's the definition of horizontal. You should keep the price fixed and then add the quantity together. That's the market demand. So the second one, when equals to $2, 3, 4. After you have all the market demands, what you need to do? You only need two columns here. The first is the price column, and the second is the market column. Because you already sum up all individuals quantity demanded. And you will get this chart, this table, the schedule. The same as the individual, just put all the numbers in the chart. 0, 24, and so on and so forth. And then draw a line, go through it. That's the market demand curve. You can see as the price increase, the quantity demanded decrease. Again, negative in demand market, always negative. And all the points just move along the demand curve. Demand curve shifters. The demand curve shows how price affects the quantity demanded and the other things being equal. These other things are non-price determinants of demand, things that determine buyer demand for good and other than the goods price. So in this slide, what the other things are non-price determinants are very important. Because for price, that's easy. That's just a line or curve, right? The price of that specific product change, and then the quantity demanded change after that. That's the law of demand. But for other things which is not price determinant are really important in this chapter. There are 5 determinants for demand curve. You should remember this 5, right? You should remember that. Number of buyers, income, prices of related good. Again, here, although it's still the price, but that's the price of related goods, not the price for that specific good. Tastes and expectations. I'm going to show them individually in details. The first one is the changes in number of buyers. Increase in number of buyers increase the quantity demanded at each price. From the individual demand to market demand, we already know that. The market demand is sum of all individual demands. That will shift the demand curve to the right, because compared with Sophia and the market demand curve, with Sophia, with the given price, the quantity demand is smaller than the market. So when we talk about market, the curve should be the outside or the right-hand side compared with Sophia or specific person's demand curve. Decrease in the number of buyers decreases the quantity demanded at each price. Shift the demand curve to the left. Suppose the number of buyers increase, then at each P, quantity demanded will increase by 5 in this example, and what will happen? At each price, the quantity will increase by 5 units. So you will have a new line. That's the new demand curve. So which means you have a new individual or new buyer, then the market demand are going to move to the outside or to the right side. I have one question, for just in this picture, in this graph, before the blue line is the market demand, right? And when, such as I have a new buyer, the new demand curve move to the right side, which is the right line. So what's the demand curve for the new buyer? What it looks like? So in this specific case, the curve should be vertical, right? No matter what the price it is, the new buyer will always buy 5 units. Which is not a reality, but this is the case in this example. Right? Because no matter what price is from 0, even though the price is equal to 0, the new buyer only want to buy 5 more. When the price equals to 1, again, only 5 more. The same. So the demand curve for these specific buyers, it should be vertical line, but not a reality here. The second one is the changes in income. So in this part, you need to know 2 new definitions: the normal good and the inferior good. For normal good, it's other things constant. An increase in income leads to an increase in demand. For normal good means if I have more income, I want to buy more of that stuff. That's the normal good. And then when your income go up, then it will shift the demand curve to the right. Inferior good is the opposite. If you have more income, you want to consume fewer that product. Something like maybe potatoes. If you are poor, maybe you want to buy more to feed yourself. But if you are rich, you want to buy more expensive, fancy food for yourself, right? But when your income go up, then the demand for the inferior good will decrease. You can see I have 2 expressions in the bottom. For the normal good, this n, small n stands for the normal, and small I stands for the inferior good. When income go up, the demand for normal go up. Income goes down, demand for normal good goes down. Always positive to normal good, and again, always negative for the inferior good. You should also remember that, okay? Positive for normal, negative for inferior good. Changes in prices and related goods. So again, you have 2 definitions in this part you need to remember. First is substitutes. Goods and services that can be used for the same purpose. You can use either one, it doesn't matter. They could substitute with each other. So 2 goods are substituted if one or an increase in price of one leads to an increase of the demand for the other. Why that happens? So I still have 2 expressions in the bottom here. The small s here doesn't mean like a supply. It means it stands for the substitute, alright? S stands for substitute, and I use P stands for the product you want to investigate. So when the price of substitutes goes up, then the quantity demanded for substitute good will go down. Again, for demand market, the relationship between price and quantity will always be negative. And for this one, it's the price for that product, and that's the quantity demanded also for that product. It should be always negative. So price go up, quantity goes down. Since these 2 products are substitutes, they are going to use for the same purpose. I can use either one. If the demand for this one is going up, then I'm going to use more of the other one. So the relationship between this substitute quantity demanded will be negative as well for substitute. So that's the expression means, and the same for the others. When the price of substitutes goes down, then the quantity demanded. The first one is quantity demanded. The second one is not. Because remember, where I mentioned that the price of the good and the quantity demanded are the pairs of words, these two. But the demand for the other product and the price for the substitute goods, they are not a pair of words. Only these two things. So the price of substitute goods goes down, and then the quantity demanded for the substitute good go up, and the demand for the other product will go down. That's the meaning of my expression here. Some examples like pizza and hamburgers, they are substitute, right? If I want to fuel myself, I want to have something to eat, I can buy either one. An increase in the price of pizza. If the price of pizza increase, then the quantity demanded for the pizza will decrease. Because my benefit, my utility doesn't change, but my cost increase. I'm going to buy more. I'm going to buy fewer. And the demand for hamburgers should go up. Since I substitute one good fewer, then I'm going to buy the substitute more. So that's the example here. And the other examples for substitutes good could be Coke, Pepsi, laptops, tablets, movie streaming, and movie theaters. You can also imagine other substitute goods as well. The next important definition is complements. So it's kind of the opposite. For complements goods and services should be used together. You have to use them both, otherwise you cannot do that or do the function of that. Two goods are complements. If I increase in the price, one leads to a decrease in the demand for the other. Still, I use two expressions to explain this sentence. When the price, this mostly represents or stand for the complements. When the price of complements go up, then the quantity demanded for complements will go down. Always negative, right? But since you are going to use them together, if you have a smaller amount of complement goods, of course you are going to have a smaller amount of the product you want to investigate. Otherwise, you cannot use it because you have to use them together. And the bottom is the same. So the relationship between the complements should be positive. The example could be the smartphone and the apps. If the price of smartphone rise, then the quantity demanded for the smartphone will be decreased. Then what do you need the apps for, since you have no smartphones? Right? Other examples could be college tuition and textbooks, bagels and cream cheese and milk and cookies. The logic is the same as the last slide. Changes in tastes. Taste, anything that causes a shift in taste toward a good will increase demand for that good and shift its demand curve to the right. Easier to understand. Like an example, advertising convince consumers that drinking 3 glasses of orange juice a day will have lower cholesterol. Demand for orange juice will increase because most people think that's healthy. I want more. That's like the bandwagon effect, right? If more people want that, such as, I don't know, maybe iPhone. If most people have that or not want to have that, then maybe I think I want to have it as well. Something like that. That will influence the market demand, the total demand, not individual. Next one is the expectations about the future. People expect an increase in income. The current is the current, all right, not the future. The current demand increases. Why? Because if I think I'm going to be rich tomorrow, I do not need to save money anymore. I can earn more tomorrow. So I'm going to buy some fancy stuff today. I don't care about saving anymore. So that will influence the current demand curve. And the same, for people expect a higher price, still higher price tomorrow in the future, then your current demand today will increase. Because compared with the future price, today's price is cheaper, of course, with the cheaper price and more. If people expect their income to rise because of a reason, their demand for meals at expensive restaurants may increase. Still, it's not at this moment, this current, all right? But all of these 5 determinants are really important. You need to remember that. Because in your test, in your assignment, you need to figure out by yourself what a determinant it is and how it will influence the demand curve, left, right, so on and so forth. Shift movement along curve. The first is change in demand. That's a shift in demand curve from point A to point C. Here, if your demand curve move, that's called the change in demand. From point A to point C, this is the demand curve change, right? Occurs when a non-price determinant of demand change, like income, like the 5 determinants I let you to remember. Only these 5 determinants change, then the demand curve will change. But for the second one, is the change in the quantity demanded. That's different from the previous one. For the quantity demanded change, it's just a movement along a fixed demand curve, like from point A to point B. That's the movement along the curve, it's not the move of the curve. So for this one, it occurs only when the price of that product change. Again, as I said, the price of that product and the quantity demanded, that's a pair of words. You should remember them together. So only when the price of that product change, you will change the quantity demanded. Other than that, if it's a non-price determinant, that will change the demand curve, change in demand. A shift to the right, an increase in demand, right? That's easy. A shift to the left, that's a decrease in demand. Here is the summary. Again, only the price of that good itself changed. That's the movement along the curve. That's the quantity demanded change. And other than that, the other 5 non-price determinants will change the demand curve. All right, this again important in this chapter. Okay, let's try one example together. Let's take a look at A first. What happens in each of the following scenarios if the price of apple juice increase? Again, for this picture, that's the demand curve for orange juice, all right? This is orange juice, and for A is the price of apple juice increase. What will happen? The price of apple juice increases, and orange juice and apple juice substitute, high price, blah blah blah. What about B? The price of orange juice fall. If the price gets lower, then the quantity demanded will increase, right? Again, it's just the movement along the curve, not the move of the curve. How about C? Alright, that's what you need to learn for the demand part. The same logic as the demand, right? For the supply schedule, it's a table. And the relationship just between the price of that good, not the others, not the related good, just the price of that good and the quantity supplied. That's called the supply schedule. And you can see from this table, the relationship between the price and the quantity supplied are positive. When the price goes up, then the quantity supplied goes up. Next one is the supply curve. So supply curve is a graph. Still, it's the relationship between the price of that good and the quantity supplied. From this graph, you can also see that for supply curve, which is totally different from the demand curve. the supply curve, the relationship between the price and the quantity supplied should be positive. So this graph is the Starbucks supply of muffins. The quantity supplied, amount of good sellers are willing and able to sell. The law of supply, the same as the law of demand. Other things equal, and when the price of that good rises, then the quantity supplied of the good rises. When the price falls, the quantity supplied falls. The relationship under the law of supply is positive. Market supply. The logic is again the same as the market demand. You should sum up the supplies here of all sellers of a good or service. Market supply curve, sum of individual supply curves horizontally. Horizontally means you should keep the price fixed and add all the individuals' demand or quantity demand. So suppose Starbucks and Pitt Coffee are only two sellers in this market. What's the market quantity supply here? So again, fix the price like 0, and then the Starbucks and Pitt's Coffee, the total supply at 0 price is 0. 3 plus 2, 5, and so on and so forth. Again, after we calculate the sum of the market demand quantity supplied, so we only need the first column and the fourth column, the market demand quantity, to have a new table and a new curve. It's easy. Find all the points on that graph and then draw a straight line, go through them. As the price increase, then increases the quantity of muffins supplied. For the demand curve, as the price go up, then the quantity demanded will decrease. They are different. So all the points are just a movement along the supply curve. This last is very important, and again, that's the determinants, right? As the determinants for demand curve, we also have some determinants for supply curve. The supply curve shows price affects quantity supplied, other things being equal, and the other things are non-price determinants. For demand curve, we have 5 determinants or non-price determinants, but for supply curve, we only have 4 of them. The first one is input prices, second, technology, third, number of sellers, fourth, expectations about the future. Changing input prices, example, like the input prices could be the wage, the price of raw materials, it could be the rent, could be like food, anything. Could be the could be the input. A fall in input prices make production more profitable at each output price. That's easier to understand. If I have a cheaper input with the limited amount of money or cost, I can buy more materials or inputs. In that case, I can produce more product. And, sell off them, I can make more profit. Firms supply a large quantity at each price, the supply shifts to the right. Supply is negatively related to prices of inputs. So this chart is kind of the same as the demand curve. Suppose the price of oranges fall at each price, the quantity of orange juice, because the orange is the input of orange juice. If the price of orange falls, which means the input price for orange juice will fall. With the fixed cost or fixed amount of money, that firm could buy a huge or a larger amount of orange. In that case, that firm could produce more orange juices than before. So the supply curve for that orange juice firm is going to shift to the right. So at this case, at each price, the quantity of orange juice supplied will increase by 5 in this example. And the supply curve shifts to the right. At each point, shifts to 5 points. So the new curve is shifted to the right. The next one is the changes in technology. Technology determines how much input are required to produce a unit of output. So the second point, a cost-saving technological improvement has the same effect as a fall in input prices. So, which means for this slide, it's kind of the same as the last slide. When the technology improves, it's the same as the input price decrease. So you can combine with the technology and the input price as the same one. Almost the same. But, when the technological improvement happens, then the input price is going to be fall and shift the supply curve to the right. Changing the number of sellers. Increase in the number of sellers increase the quantity supplied at each price, shift the supply curve to the right. As the example we saw before, like for one individual sellers, like Starbucks, that's the supply curve over here. When the price equals to 1 and total supply quantity is 3, price equals to 2 and the quantity equals to 6. But when we add 2 firms together, Starbucks and Peet's Coffee, then when the price equals to 1, the quantity supplied is 5 instead of 3. So when we can add more individual suppliers, the supply curve is going to shift to the right side. Because at the given price or fixed price, the quantity supplied is going to be more. A decrease in the number of sellers decreases the quantity supplied at each price, shifts the supply curve to the left. More sellers to the right, fewer sellers to the left. Expectations about future. Some example like events in the Middle East lead to expectation of higher oil prices, which means for the sellers, they expect the oil price in the future will increase, right? So what's the owner of Texas oil fields will do? They are going to reduce the supply now at this moment to save some inventory to sell later at a higher price. If you are a seller, it's easier to understand because they expect that the price in the future will be higher. Then I'm going to make more profit in the future. In that case, I want to sell more in the future. But with the fixed inventory, maybe I'm going to sell just a few amount of that quantity today. So if the sellers expect that the price is going to go up in the future, then the owners is going to supply few or less today, which means the supply curve is going to shift to the left. So remember, when the expectation of future price is also a determinant of the demand curve, right? As a consumer, when we expect that the future price will go up, we are going to buy more today. But for sellers, they are going to sell fewer today. What will happen? We will look at that example in a couple of next slides. But just think about that in your mind. Sellers may adjust the supply when their expectations of future prices change. So if the good is not perishable, right? So for determinants, the input price, the technology, the number of sellers, and the expectation of future. The fourth one is the determinant for both. Shifts and movement along the supply curve, this is the same as the demand curve. The change in supply means a shift in the supply curve, which means from point A to point C. If change in supply, which means the move of the supply curve, occurs over a non-price determinant of supply changes. And again, there are only 4 determinants for supply curve move. And the change in the quantity supply, when we talk about quantity supply, only one reason to cause that is the price of that product change. So a movement along a fixed supply curve from point A to point B only occurs when the price change. The same as demand curve, right? So shift to the right is increasing and shift to the left is decreasing. Again, a summary. So only one reason is the movement along the curve or the change the quantity supplied is the price of that good change. And the other 4 non-price determinants will shift the supply curve. And these 4 determinants are also very important in this chapter. You need to remember them. Okay, let's see an example together. What happens to it in each of the following scenarios, such as the A. Grocery stores cut the price of apple juice. What will happen? What will happen to the point A and what will happen to the quantity? If cut the price, which means for supply curve, the price is going to decrease because it's cut the price. So again, since this is the price for the apple juice, it's not the price of others, just this stuff. So the change is only the points move along the curve. It's the change in quantity supply, which means A is going to move downside along this curve. Price, decrease in price of apple juice, move down along the supply curve to a lower P and a lower Q. So I think that's a common mistakes. Sometimes we confuse with the demand curve, supply curve. So that's the reason why we need to remember that are different determinants. For demand curve, there are 5 determinants, and for supply, there are 4 determinants. We should find out what the question's determinant is, and after that, we can know that these determinants belong to supply, belong to demand, and what curve it will move, something like that, right? So that's A. How about B? A technological advance. Technological advance, better technology reduces the production cost. So at each price, QS increases. The supply curve shifts to the right. The last one, the grocery store cut the price of orange juice. What will happen? The answer is nothing. Because that's not the determinant for supply curve. The substitute or the complements. So decrease in price of orange juice. Apple juice and orange juice are substitutes, but that is a demand shifter. And this shifts the demand curve for apple juice, not the supply curve. So the supply curve in this case doesn't change. Right? Questions about this one? Again, what's really important is you should distinguish what are the demand determinants, what are the supply determinants. Do not confuse. Okay, then that's what we are going to jump into, what you answered a couple of minutes before. The equilibrium. Price has reached to the level where quantity supplied equals to quantity demand. So at the equilibrium price where QS equals to QD equals to the equilibrium quantity. So the first sentence, the price has reached the level where quantity supplied equals quantity demand. So from this table, we can see that at different price, the quantity demand and quantity supplied, the number are different. But when the price equals to 3, we can see that quantity demand equals to 50. And quantity supply equals to 50 as well. Why? We can always figure out the price and make the quantity supply and quantity demand equals to each other. We can always find the price. Because the relationship between for demand curve, the relationship for the price and demand, the quantity demand is negative, right? So the straight line is shifted downward. But for the price and the quantity supplied, that's positive. The price go up, the quantity go up. So a downward straight line and the upward straight line, you can always find an intersection. Right? So you can find in this example, when price equals to 3, you can find the equal quantities. So in this example, the equilibrium price is 3, and the equilibrium quantity is 50. You can also find that in this curve. So again, for supply curve is upward, for demand curve is downward. So you can always find an intersection. So 3 and 15. Equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. So this point is the equilibrium point. The intersection is the equilibrium. Market not in equilibrium. First of all, market price is determined by both supply and demand. If you only have one curve, like supply curve, you cannot find the equilibrium, right? Supply, no. Demand, no. Only when you have both of them, you can have equilibrium. Whatever, or market equilibrium, you can find that point. If the price is higher, seller will compete. Okay, here. In this example, the market equilibrium, the price is 1.5. That's the equilibrium price, right? The intersection. And the equilibrium quantity is 5. So in the perfectly competitive market, remember last class we talked. Many sellers and many buyers. Days. Thank you. It's noisy. Not okay. Okay. That's the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. In perfectly competitive market, you should have many sellers, many buyers. They sell the identical product and no barriers, right? So you can easier find the market equilibrium price, or points or whatever. But what if the price is higher than the equilibrium price? Such as if the price is at P1, what will happen? More supply, right? And fewer demand. For suppliers, that's easier because the price is high. They are going to have a higher profit. But for buyers or consumers, with a higher price, their utility will not change by consuming one unit of product or goods or service. But the price, the cost is going to be higher. So they are going to consume fewer products. So in this case, the quantity supplied is bigger than the quantity demanded. What will happen? Since more sellers are going to sell their product, but only fewer buyers want to buy, then the sellers cannot sell all of their products. If they cannot sell their products, they cannot get profit. But their cost already exists. In that case, they want to sell as much or as many as their product as possible. So they are going to compete with each other. The best way is to lower their price because, again, in this market, all products are identical, no difference, right? If I sell the same stuff as the others, if I lower my price, which means all consumers are going to buy my product, not the others, because we have no difference. So all sellers are going to compete with each other to lower their own price. When the price gets lower and lower, you can see the fewer sellers are going to produce this product. The quantity supplies are going to decrease, right? For sellers, when the price decreases from P1 to lower level, then because the price gets lower, the marginal cost gets lower, the marginal benefit doesn't change, then more consumers are going to buy this product. Depends on their own utility. If their own utility is higher than others, then this type of consumers are going to buy that product at a higher price, right? So when the price decreases, more consumers are going to buy that product, but fewer sellers are going to sell that product. But if the price is still higher than the equilibrium price, the same situation happens. More supply than the demand, then the sellers are still competing with each other, still decreasing their price. So the price will keep decreasing up until to the equilibrium point, or the equilibrium price. So that's the reason why it's here. If price is higher, sellers will compete amongst themselves for driving the price down, and there will be If the price is higher, then there is a surplus. The surplus means the quantity supplied is bigger than the quantity demand. If the quantity supplied is bigger than the quantity demand, then there is a surplus. The surplus will only happen when the price is bigger than the equilibrium price. So if the question asks you, what's the surplus in this question? So the surplus, the number of surplus, just the difference between these two points. So in this case, if the price at P1, the surplus will be Q2 minus Q1. That's the surplus amount. And the same as shortage. If the price is lower than the equilibrium price, the same logic will happen. At this scenario, there are more, because the price is lower, then for suppliers or sellers, they have fewer profit. So a lot of them do not want to produce this product because they prefer higher profit. And for consumers, they want to buy more because their opportunity cost is lower. So with a cheaper price, more demand. In that case, we have a shortage. Shortage means the quantity demand is bigger than the quantity supply. That's totally opposite, right? If quantity supply is bigger, then that's a surplus. If the quantity demand is bigger, then it's the shortage. If shortage happens, more demand and fewer supply, then in this scenario, consumers are going to compete with each other. Because with the limited resources of quantity, I want to get it, I do not want other people to get it. What I will do, I'm going to pay a higher price to get that product. That will drive the price up. If the price P is between 1.5 and P2, the same situation still happens, shortage. And that will keep driving the price up until the equilibrium price happens. If the price is lower, consumers will compete for limited products, driving the price up and up until to the equilibrium points. Basically, surplus happens, the price will go down to the equilibrium. If shortage happens, then the price will go up to the equilibrium point. The equilibrium price is also called the market clearing price. Supply and demand together. In a competitive market, the market is able to eliminate all surpluses and shortage. As I talked before, right? If the price is higher, then sellers are going to compete with each other to lower their own price. If there is a shortage, the price is lower, then buyers are going to compete with each other to pay a higher price. But at the end, the price just will be the equilibrium price. And that means the surpluses and the shortages are only temporary disequilibrium. phenomenon. That will not last longer, but only under the competitive market. Economists assume that when there is a change in demand or supply, that price reach a new equilibrium after an adjustment period that varies. So usually there are 3 steps to analyzing changes in equilibrium. The first step is decide whether the event shifts the supply curve, the demand curve, or in some case, both curves. So for the first step, what you need to understand is that 9 determinants. 5 determinants for the demand and 4 determinants for the supply. If you can remember them, then you will know what determinants will shift what curve, right? After you figure out what determinant it is, and you can answer the second question. Decide whether the curves shift to the right or shift to the left. But when you figure out left or right, you can compare with the final result. Use the supply and the demand diagram, compare the initial and the new equilibrium effects on the equilibrium price and quantity. All right. So back to this picture. Remember, I asked you a question before, like if we expect that the oil price in the future will increase, what will happen to the consumers? They are going to consume more or less today. Because today's price is cheaper, right? For consumers, they need more. How about for suppliers? Sellers are going to sell less because they want to sell more in the future, more expensive, more profit. But the consumers only are going to need more. Okay. The effect on demand and supply shifts on equilibrium. There are 9 situations. The first one, if one curve doesn't change, that's the easiest scenario. If the demand curve unchanged, the supply curve. If the supply curve unchanged, which is just D and S, the equilibrium price will not change. P star, Q star, that's the equilibrium price, and the equilibrium quantity will not change. What if the supply curve shifts to the right? Which means the increase is high, right? The supply curve shifts from S to S1, but demand curve doesn't shift. So you can see with the new equilibrium points, the price decreased, right? P1 is smaller than P star, the previous equilibrium price. But the quantity, the new quantity Q1 is going to be bigger than previous equilibrium quantity. So in this case, if the supply curve shifted to the right, Q increases, Q star to Q1, and P decreases from P star to P1. What if demand curve doesn't change, but the supply curve shifts to the left, which means the supply curve S is going to shift to the S2, shifted to the left. So again, with the new picture or intersection, you can see the price goes up and the quantity goes up. Quantity decreases and the price increases. These 3 are the easiest scenarios. But if both curves move, that's a little bit complicated in this case. If demand curve shifts to the right, so that's in the bottom 3 pictures, all demand curves are going to shift to the right, from D to D1 or D to D3. Let's see the left bottom corner first. If the demand curve shifted to the right and the supply curve doesn't change, that's easy, right? Only one curve moves. So demand curve shifts to the right. The new equilibrium is here. That's the original equilibrium. You can see the new equilibrium price is going to be P1, bigger than P star. And the Q1 is still bigger than the Q star. So both P and Q increase. What happens if supply curve shifts to the right? First, the supply curve shifts to the right. And also, the demand curve should also shift to the right. In this scenario, we have three different situations. If the demand curve shifts to the right as the same amount as supply curve shift, and then you can see that's from D to D1. That's the purple line here. From D to D1, the same amount as the supply shift. Then the new equilibrium is this point. The previous equilibrium is here. So we can see the price doesn't change, right? The equilibrium price is still P star. But the equilibrium quantity changed from Q star to Q1. So quantity increased, but price doesn't change. What if the shift of demand curve is smaller amount than the supply shift, which is from D to D2? That's the blue line. So that's a smaller amount as supply shift, right? So that's the new equilibrium. The intersection between the blue line and the red line. The black line are the original equilibrium. You can see the price decreased from P star to P2. The quantity increased from Q star to Q2. What happens if the demand curve shifts by a larger amount than the supply curve shift? Which means D shift from a black line to the green line, from D to D3. So the new intersection for D3 and the SY is this intersection between the green line and the red line. And the original intersection is the black lines. So you can see the price goes up, but the quantity goes up as well. So it depends on the different amount of shifts by demand curve. You have three different scenarios. But no matter in what scenarios, your quantity goes up always. But what's ambiguous is the price. It could be doesn't change, goes up, or goes down. Right? So if demand curve shifted to the right and the supply curve shifts to the right as well, the Q increases anyway in all scenarios. But P could increases, decreases, or is unchanged. The same logic for the third one. If the demand curve shifted to the right, the supply curve shifted to the left. So supply curve shifted from S to S2 to the left. And still three different scenarios. If demand curve shifted by the same amount, so the Q, the quantity will not change, but the price changed from P star to P1. If demand curve shifted by a smaller amount, then the new intersection is the intersection between blue line and the red line. You can see the price increased from P star to P2, but the quantity decreased from Q star, previous equilibrium to the Q2. If the demand curve shifted by a larger amount, then both the price and the quantity will increase. So quantity will increase, decrease, or unchanged. This depends on how huge or how large the movement of E compared with S. But P will always increase in this scenario, right? The same for this one. The demand curve shifted to the left. If supply curve unchanged, then both quantity and the price will decrease. If demand curve shifted to the left and the supply curve shifted to the right, then the quantity will increase, decrease, or unchanged. But the price, the P, will always decreases. You can see from the middle bottom picture, right? P will always decrease, but the quantity is ambiguous. The last one is demand curve shifts to the left and the supply curve shifts to the left. Then Q decreases. The quantity will decreases all the time, but the price is ambiguous. So all of them together are 9 scenarios or situations. If you know how to draw the picture, I think it's really easy for you to answer the question, right? And that's the third step for when you want to answer that question. Like third step is here. Third step is here, right? So the first step again is to decide whether the event shifts the supply-demand curve or in both. That's asking you what determinant it is, and how the determinants influence the supply or demand curve. And the last step, you are going to use that 9 situations to compare the new equilibrium with the previous equilibrium. Supply and demand together. So the event is increase in the price of donut. And again, you need to focus on the market here. What market is really important? If this is the donut market, then the result will be totally different. But this is the market for muffins, and the event is the increase in the price of donuts. What will happen for this market, or in this market? What determinant it is? Increase the price of donuts. Because there are substitutes, so shifted to the right, consumer will buy fewer expensive donuts and switch. So the demand curve is going to shift to the right, and you need to draw this picture by yourself. And after you draw the picture, it's easier to figure out that new equilibrium, right? So both price and quantity will go up. So that's 3 steps you need to follow when you answer this kind of questions. Next one. New technology of producing muffins. What determines it is? What's for the new equilibrium? The technology is kind of the same as the input price, right? The input price gets cheaper, then the suppliers are going to supply more to the right, but it doesn't influence the demand curve. With the new equilibrium, P decreases, but Q increases. What about this one? So we already figured it out, right? So the first one is going to move the demand curve, and the second one is going to move the supply curve. What's the new equilibrium would be? What the price and what's the quantity will be? Both curve shifts. If demand curve shifts by a larger amount than the supply curve, then you can see that's the result. Both the P and Q increase, right? That happens when the demand curve shifts by a larger amount. But what if the supply curve shifts by a larger amount, or demand curve shifts by a smaller amount? Then the price will decrease, but quantity will increase anyway. So in conclusion, markets are usually a good way to organize economic activities, and again, in competitive markets. Because if the price is higher, there is a surplus. Then the sellers are going to compete with each other, drive the price down to the equilibrium. If the price is lower than the equilibrium, buyers are going to compete with each other, which is going to drive the price up, reach out to the equilibrium again. So markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. In market economies, do you still remember what's market economies? Only 2 parts in that market, right? The household and firms. There is no government there. So prices adjust to balance supply and demand. These equilibrium prices are the signals that guide economic decisions and thereby allocate scarce resources. That's the conclusion about what we learned.